Welcome to According to Sam, folks. This is episode 433. Thank you for joining me today. So I want to start today's podcast by reintroducing our theme. And we started this theme, I guess, a couple of weeks before the 4th of July. And the reason that we got on this theme is because we, on the 4th of July, celebrated our 250th anniversary, the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. It's not the 250th anniversary of the United States, but this is our 250th year, and we are in our third century. So I started talking about the crises that we are facing in our third century and relating it to the crises of the third century that the Roman Empire experienced. And if you understand Roman history, you know that the third century crises of the third century is when the Roman Empire starts to change forever. They have their high point, which is a period, I don't know how long Pax Romana lasts, but the Nerva Antonine dynasty goes all the way to Commodus. This is all dramatized in the movie Gladiator. Commodus's father, Marcus Aurelius, dies. Commodus becomes the new emperor. Commodus is assassinated. After Commodus is assassinated, Septimus Severus begins the Severan dynasty, and the Severan dynasty is the beginning of the end. Septimus Severus is able to keep the empire together for a short period of time. And this is all dramatized in Gladiator Part 2, the descendants of Septimus Severus, his two sons. And anyway, they're able to hold together again, but at the end of the Severan dynasty, Marcus Aurelius Severus is the last of the Severan dynasty, and that's when the crisis of the third century starts. But it really starts, if you understand this, that when Marcus Aurelius dies and leaves the empire to Commodus. Commodus was such a weak leader. That's why he's assassinated. And from that point on, the empire was in crises. Anyway, just into that history, the third century crisis, again, is what the Roman Empire changed forever. There were many things that the Roman Empire was facing in the third century crisis, multiple assassinations and usurpers trying to seize the empire and become emperors, barbarian invasions, migrations, peasant rebellions, political instability, usurpers, which we just talked about, debasement of currency. And I've been talking about this. I've been talking about the fact that some of these issues that Rome was facing in their third century parallel with the crises that we're facing. Debasement of currency is one of these. It's so interesting hearing people talk about affordability and the affordability crisis. And the Democrats are like, we want to fix this affordability crisis. You guys created the affordability crisis. What are you talking about? You want to fix the affordability crisis. But for all these people, lay people, citizens who are out in the streets and having to deal in this economy with everything being unaffordable. I mean, and even Donald Trump is trying to gaslight people and tell you that this is, the golden age and everything, that affordability is just, is a democratic narrative and all this stuff. He's completely wrong. His messaging on this is completely wrong. Affordability is a problem, but it's very important that people understand why affordability is a problem. And if you go out and elect Democrats because they're promising you that they're going to tackle affordability and you don't understand what is causing the inaffordability, then, you're just fooling yourself. And you're going to put the Democrats back in, and they're going to make the affordability crises even worse, because the reason that we're having an affordability crisis is because of this parallel that we are having, that we do have with our crises of debasement of currency and the Roman Empire is crises. One of the crises that they were dealing with in their third century is the debasing of currency. This is a parallel. That this is one of the paralleling crises that our currency is being debased. The reason that things are unaffordable is because the currency, the value of the dollar is less and less. They're debasing the currency. That's what was happening with the currency in Rome. That the value of the currency, they were doing it by taking the precious metal out of the coinage. But that's the same thing that's happening as we print more money, and we're approaching $40 trillion in debt. As we print more money and create more debt, we are debasing our currency. And that's why things are unaffordable. And unless Democrats have a strategy of stopping the debasement of our currency, they're not going to be able to make things affordable and bring down prices again. So anyway, this is the theme that we've been talking about, and we've done a podcast on each one of these crises that we've listed so far. We will be adding more to this because we are dealing with many crises in our third century. We've done the podcast on the election crisis, the education crisis. I don't know if you guys saw this teacher in Houston that went viral crying about kids not being able to read. And a lot of people were saying that, that he got a lot of criticism. This teacher going viral was very interesting because had a lot of people coming out and saying, "Oh, he's not credentialed. He's not a real teacher. The kids are fine." The kids are not fine, people. The education system is not fine. I don't know if this guy was just, recording himself crying, clout chasing and for clicks and views or what. But I know the kids are not fine. And I know the data tells you that. The data tells you we have agencies that track how the kids are doing as far as being able to read and education, and kids are not fine. The kids are dumb. So we have an education crisis. We have a debt crisis, $40 trillion in debt. We have a treason crisis. And then we've been talking for the past few weeks about the racial tribalism crisis, all pertaining to the rise of Marxism is a crisis. And we've been relating this theme to the quote from Alexander Fraser Tyler, who is the Scottish judge and historian. And he said that a democracy is only temporary in nature. It simply cannot exist as a permanent form of government. A democracy will continue to exist until the time that voters discover that they can vote themselves generous gifts, largesse, from the public treasury. And from that moment on, the majority always votes for the candidate that promises the most benefits from the public treasury, with the result that every democracy will finally collapse due to loose fiscal policies, which always followed by dictatorship. And that's what I'm telling you, that these people and the people they work for, they've created this debt, all this debt that you see here, nearly $40 trillion in debt, the majority of it, the bulk of it. And when the debt started to climb was during the Bush administration. All of the debt you can see here has been created in the last 25 years. And it's been done on purpose. And it's been done on purpose to create the conditions, again, for the rise of Marxism. If you want Marxism to rise, then you need to create the conditions of Marxism. These people looted the country. It was a transfer of wealth from the public treasury into private hands, because what they are doing is what Alexander Fraser Tyler is talking about here. They want to create this system of bondage that is a totalitarian state, a state of bondage that can never be overthrown. This cycle will never happen again. That they will have the technology and the surveillance tools, just like George Orwell theorizes in his book 1984, that you will never overthrow the bondage that they're creating. And I've been telling you that these people want Marxism. And you're like, well, why would the Clintons want Marxism? Why would the Bushes want Marxism? Why would the Obamas want Marxism? Why would Biden want Marxism? Why would these people want Marxism? And I've been telling you that understanding Marxism from the perspective of the bourgeoisie is completely different from understanding Marxism from the perspective of the proletariat. And if you don't understand that, you got to understand that these people are setting themselves up and their friends to be a permanent bourgeoisie. That's what this bondage would be. And we've been talking about that fact that racism and the racial tribalism crises that we're facing right now in our third century is being used. The conflict is being used. It's Marxist conflict theory is being used to divide the nation. And this is all part, again, of not only creating, the debt and the economic situations that contribute to the rise of Marxism, also creating the conflict. And that's what the racial tribalism is about. And we're going to talk more about the racial tribalism again in this podcast. Let's listen again to what G. Edward Griffin said back in the 1950s.
As early as 1928, the communists declared that the racial differences among our people constituted the weakest and most vulnerable point in our social fabric. By constantly probing and straining at this one spot, they calculated that eventually the cloth could be torn apart and that Americans could be divided, weakened, and perhaps even set against each other in open combat. We mustn't kid ourselves into thinking that the communists have placed their agitators only into the black communities. They're working both sides of the street.
So creating the racial conflict and using racism to promote Marxist conflict theory in the United States to conquer the United States, to create the environment for Marxism. You remember, and been talking in the last podcast about, George Floyd 2.0 and how they're using this Nolan Wells case, for George, as the same way they use George Floyd for politics. And if you can't see that now, then I really don't know what to tell you, because it's so clear that they're using this for politics, but it's all about politics. Everything's about politics. But remember when I was thinking about this, when the lesbians who started Black Lives Matter, when they came out, they admitted to themselves, admitted to the world that we're trained Marxists. That's what they said. I wish I had that clip prep of these ladies from that started Black Lives Matter. These lesbians said, we're trained Marxists. And what did these Marxists do? When the donations started rolling in to Black Lives Matter, they go and they buy properties in Beverly Hills where the white people live, these trained Marxists. People, how can you not see what's going on? But I'll keep spelling it out for you. But yes, as I've been saying, this whole Nolan Wells things is part of their strategy to get out the vote. And it's about politics. And that should be clear to you right now. But everything's about politics. It's all about politics. And this situation with Stephen A. Smith, if you haven't heard about what happened over the weekend, this was the NABJ, the National Association of Black Journalists, held their annual meeting in Atlanta. And this is when they brought out Nolan Wells's family and Hakeem Jeffries and all the Democrats from the Congressional Black Caucus. Look at Christine's face here again. I mean, look at this. I mean, she's glowing. She's glowing, living her best life. So at this meeting at the NABJ, which stands for National Association of Black Journalists, and no matter what you think about Stephen A. Smith, he is a sports journalist. He got his start writing in Philadelphia, I believe. And he's a journalist. He's a contributor to the National Association of Black Journalists. But at the end of their event over the weekend, they gave Stephen A. Smith a thumbs down and this kind of like roasting him at this event, which he's a member of this organization. I think there's only 3,000 members of this organization. Again, no matter what you think about Stephen A. Smith, this guy's very successful. He works for ABC Disney. He contributes to the National Association of Black Journalists, and they roast him like this. I want you to take a look at what they did. This is the National Association of Black Journalists. I'm playing this because I'm just showing you that everything is about politics. Everything is about politics.
Stephen A. Smith, sports analyst and political commentator. Smith has established a recurring public pattern of disparaging commentary directed at prominent black women across politics, sports, and media. Such commentary reinforces harmful narratives, undermines the fair and respectful representation of black women in public discourse,
Wow.
and stands in direct conflict with NABJ's longstanding commitment to accurate, responsible, and inclusive portrayals of black community.
Wow. So they give him this thumbs down, and make this spectacle out of him, shaming him, roasting Stephen A. Smith at this event for this organization that he's a member of. And he's done tons of work for it. He gave a response to this today on his podcast. And I mean, he's hurt by this. You can tell that he's hurt. And, most of what he says is kind of, weak sauce, because I would have gone much harder on them if they would have done this to me. But he obviously still wants to be accepted in these circles. And he talks about all the things he did. But this is one part that Stephen A. Smith, and he does say in this response to the National Association of Black Journalists that this is about politics, that you wouldn't be saying, he says it right here, that this is about politics. Because the reason that they did that is because of statements that he said about Jasmine Crockett and her ghetto act, which is an act. This girl went to private school her entire life, and that ghetto act that she does in Congress, he criticized that. He criticized Joy Reid, I guess, and Kamala Harris as well. Those are the three black women that they accused him of being disparaging to. Anyway, so he, in his response today, he said this is all about politics. He says that that I'm an independent. I have friends. I go on Sean Hannity's show, Bill O'Reilly. I have friends that are conservatives. I'm conservative when it comes to tax policy, is what he says. That this is all about politics. If it wasn't about politics, then, you guys wouldn't be doing this. And this is the most important part of what he says, which I think is very interesting, because it is about politics and everybody knows that it's about politics. And the point that I'm trying to make is that these institutions and organizations, like the National Association of Black Journalists, like the NAACP, have been traditionally bipartisan. They've made, like I told you, the NAACP, when it started, most of their members were Republicans. And then it started to shift, because when the NAACP started, most black people were Republicans, because Republicans were responsible for Reconstruction and ending slavery. The NABJ it's a journalism organization. They've had a tradition of being nonpartisan and unbiased. And now they're being overtly political. This is overtly political, what you're seeing from the NABJ and from the NAACP and from the Urban League. And they're discrediting themselves. That's what Stephen A. Smith says here. Take a listen.
And we throw out a very incendiary critique of me, accusing me of disparaging black women. When what you really meant to say is that I'm disparaging liberals.
I wish he would have said Democrats there, that I'm disparaging Democrats, because that's what it is. Joy Reid, Democrat, Jasmine Crockett, Democrat, Kamala Harris, Democrats. And quite frankly, I don't think any of those people are liberals in what I think liberals are. But he says liberals. I wish he would have said Democrats here, because it's Democrats.
To say is that I'm disparaging liberals because I happen to disagree with some of the things that the left is doing. People behind the scenes in the political stratosphere, in my opinion, influenced your decision to do what you did. If these so-called disparaging things I did, which again is totally false, were true, and I was saying it about black female conservatives, you wouldn't have said a word. Which means it's not my credibility that's in question. It's yours.
He's right. He's right.
Because a journalism organization ain't supposed to be doing that. You ain't supposed to be taking sides.
You ain't supposed to be taking sides. You ain't supposed to be taking sides NABJ. You ain't supposed to be taking sides, NAACP. You ain't supposed to be taking sides, Urban League. Traditionally, all of these organizations had I mean, even though they've been taking sides, but they've always poshed themselves, presented themselves as being non-biased, non-political. And now they're being overtly political. The NAACP being overtly political, taking the side of the Democratic Party. The NABJ taking the side of the Democratic Party, and Stephen A. Smith is absolutely right. This is about politics. It's all about politics. Everything is about politics, people. And I have to reiterate the situation that the Democratic Party is in so you can understand these tactics that you're seeing right now. You have to understand, and I have to reiterate again, what the Democratic Party is facing, that the Democratic Party has increments. That's why it hasn't been registering. That's why they've been able to marginalize when you see black people, you know, like who was it in 2016? Diamond and Silk, you know, and the Ben Carsons and the who else? You mean there were always, you could always say that those are fringe black conservatives. That black conservatives, they may be a fringe, a small, part of the political spectrum, black conservatives, but it's marginal. It's marginal. And if it's marginal, you're able to marginalize them because it was only incremental. Look at this, people. But when you start adding the increments up from 2012 incrementally, and it's most pronounced with black men. This is all young. This is 18 to 29, but you can see right here, young black men, 18 to 29. And this is all black men. I have all black men here too. Same thing. Let's just look at all black men first. 2012, 95%. 2016, 90%. 2020, 86%. 2024, 79%. This is, yes, it's been incremental. It's been marginal. But blacks only make up, like I told you when I read that article that I wrote in 2023, that, you know, the black Americans only make up 12% of the population. Democrats can't afford to lose any more black voters, even on the margins, even though that it's incremental. And it's only been incremental from 95 to 90, from 90 to 86. This is just black men, overall black men. But you can see this trend is through all black voters. They're bleeding black voters, people. This is what it's about. And it's all political. Everything is political. The Nolan Wells, George Floyd, 2026 narrative that they're using. That's why they're desperate. They're desperate. That's what this is about. That's what this is about. And they're all playing it. Politics, girl. I saw this video from politics. This woman is a complete nut job. She's Canadian. I've shown you that this woman's Canadian, born in Canada. She just got her American citizenship last year, so she has dual citizenship, but she's been a Canadian her entire life. Politics, girl. She goes on CNN. You know, this woman is completely deranged. But I saw this video on my timeline the other day, and I'm like, this is completely deranged. But this is the narrative that they're going with. That this is the whole strategy to get out the vote, to get black voters out the vote specifically. But again, like I said, it's not only black voters. Going back to 2020, Black Lives Matter was the mantra. So it's not only to motivate black voters, it's to motivate anybody who believes that Black Lives Matter. Anyone whose heartstrings that I can tug on and say, you got to come out and you got to vote for Democrats to stop this. Listen to this video. Listen to how deranged this woman is.
Stop. Black Americans are being hunted and murdered in Mississippi. I'm going to.
Oh my God. Can you imagine? That's the statement that she makes. I saw this when she said stop. I was like, whoa, I got to stop. Let me see what this woman said. Black Americans are being hunted in Mississippi. Listen to what she says.
Stop. Black Americans are being hunted and murdered in Mississippi. I'm going to say that again because it's horrifying, and the mainstream media is too busy allowing the Trump administration to dominate the news cycle, lying about the economy.
So the mainstream media isn't the mainstream media isn't reporting about how Black Americans are being hunted in Mississippi. The mainstream media isn't reporting on that, politics girl. This is deranged. And you see it everywhere. And I want you to understand why, because it's about politics. It's all about politics. All right. So, let's talk about Smooth Criminal. And, I want to get back into something that we talked about a few podcasts with this guy. I think it was 2 podcasts ago. We played the clip of him in this interview over 4th of July weekend. And I was showing you how this guy divides America and how it's really, really Machiavellian and subtle, really smooth. That's why I call him Smooth Criminal. But I want to show you what this guy is doing here in this interview. Let's listen to it again. And this was something that went viral over the 4th of July weekend as the United States is celebrating the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And everybody is having this, this joyous moment. Not everybody, but, sane people. And this is how he reigns on the parade. Take a listen.
And I think sometimes we get confused in thinking that these two stories are completely separate. They're intertwined,
yeah.
Right? And which is why it's possible for me to be a great admirer of George Washington and also acknowledge he was a slaveholder. Mm-hmm. And that does not negate his greatness. It simply acknowledges that there's a profound, deep flaw in these founding fathers who were also geniuses.
So I want you to notice, sir, like I said, it's really subtle what he's doing there. So he extrapolates from George Washington, who George Washington was from Virginia. Virginia was a slave state. Virginia, started off in the reason that Virginia became a great state is because of agriculture. Started off with tobacco, and then from tobacco, cotton. And yes, Virginia was a slave state, and that's where but not all of the founding fathers were from Virginia. Not all of the founding fathers were from slave states. So he takes this saying that, yes, George Washington, that we can, acknowledge that George Washington was a slave owner, and I can still admire George Washington. And then he extrapolates very subtly and says that the founding fathers were slave owners. Well, no, not all the founding fathers were slave owners. Quite a bit of them, a large percentage of them were not slave owners and were vehemently against slavery. But again, like I told you when we talked about this last time, that Obama's own family were slave owners because his family comes from southern states, just like George Washington. His family is from Kansas, and they were slave owners. Obama told his family's slave owning history in Deep South. Amateur genealogist has revealed a surprise in the family tree of the black contender for the race to be the Democrats' presidential candidate. And this was during the 2008 campaign, I guess, when this came out. Following correction was printed in the Overseers for Record column Sunday 2000. And the question, anyway, Obama's own family they owned slaves because Obama's family, this is his family. His family is, white. This is his family. And they own slaves in Kansas. Why doesn't he talk about his own family owning slaves? Why do you have to say that the founding fathers were slave owners? Obama's part of the Bush family. Bush and Obama are cousins. They're slave owners. They were slave owners. So what is Obama doing here? He's dividing us. He's dividing us by saying that the founding fathers were slave owners. All the founding fathers were slave owners. Let's listen to it again. I want you, with that context, I want you to listen.
To be a great admirer of George Washington and also acknowledge he was a slaveholder. Mm-hmm. And that does not negate his greatness. It simply acknowledges that there's a profound, deep flaw in these founding fathers who were also geniuses and gave us these tools. And which is true of all of us, right? It's true of every president.
And you see how he does that. It's very subtle that the founding fathers, that we can say that they gave us these tools and they were great men, but they were also slave owners. Yeah, some of them were, but some of them weren't. A lot of them weren't. A lot of them were. And just like the ones who were slave owners, your family were slave owners, Obama. But this is all about what they're doing. And this is what the 1619 Project is about. This is what the debate about the Smithsonian is about. And it is about this narrative of history that says that everything in our system of government and our way of life is rooted in slavery. It's rooted in oppression because these evil slave owners instituted it. That's again, if you look at the platform of the DSA, Democratic Socialists of America, like I've shown you, number one on their platform is abolish the Senate and the Electoral College. Now, why again do they want to abolish the Senate and Electoral College? Is because they want to go to direct democracy. That's what the D stands for in Democratic Socialists. If they go to direct democracy, then it's easier for them to control. This is the whole. So what do? They associate the Senate and the Electoral College with slavery and say that the reason that we have to get rid of the Senate and the Electoral College is because it's associated with slavery and Jim Crow. So they use Black grievance. They use the history of Black people in America as a reason why we have to get rid of this part of our system of government, the bicameral legislature, the Senate, and the Electoral College. And they are all, remember what AOC, who is one of the leading candidates in the polling for the presidential nomination for the Democratic Party, which is unbelievable. You talk about idiocracy, that this idiot is leading in the polls in New Hampshire, in the state of New Hampshire, which was one of the earliest primaries. She's at the top of the list now for Democratic candidates for president. I think I have that here. Yeah, you can see that right here. This is the latest poll for July in New Hampshire. AOC, Pete Buttigieg, Mark Kelly, Gavin Newsom, Bernie Sanders. Those are the top five. And she's a complete moron. This is what she says about the Senate. When they question her, she says that it's founded in Jim Crow. Never mind that Jim Crow is an institution that's not even established until after Reconstruction. Nearly 100 years after the creation of the bicameral legislature and the Senate, but she knows that associating it with Jim Crow is going to play on that Black grievance and play on that pain that Black people have, and that this can be a way to get people to support the elimination of the bicameral legislature, the Senate.
Elements of this institution that we know, were founded on Jim Crow.
Founded on Jim Crow, the Senate. The Senate was founded on Jim Crow, and you can see Ted Cruz. He's the one who posts this. He says, this is what happens when you don't teach basic history. Just basic history. And this woman is a leading candidate for the Democratic nomination. But this is also going on with the Electoral College. I played the clip of Jamel Hill talking about the Electoral College is rooted in slavery. Take a listen. This is what she says.
It's better if you make the argument when you didn't lose the election. You know what I'm saying? Is that
from a position of strength.
On the position of strength. It's like, listen, anybody who studied any small bit of history knows the Electoral College is rooted in slavery.
Anyone who has studied a small bit of history. Now, if she wouldn't have given that qualifier, this wouldn't be as egregious as it is, because she's obviously not studied a small bit of history. But she says anyone who studied a small bit of history knows that the Electoral College is rooted in slavery. Now, I want you to notice that all these people, as we're getting ready to go through this, have the same opinion about the very first agenda on the DSA's platform to get rid of the Senate and the Electoral College. What I'm trying to show you is that people are trying to say that the DSA is fringe, that the DSA's ideas are in the minority in the Democratic Party. And what I'm showing you right now, no, this isn't in the minority. Leading candidates for president of the United States agree with the DSA about getting rid of the Senate. Leading commentators for the Democratic Party, like Jamel Hill, agree with getting rid of the Electoral College, agree with the DSA about the Electoral College and the Senate, and that the Senate, that we got to get rid of it because it's rooted in Jim Crow, and the Electoral College, we have to get rid of it because it's rooted in slavery. People, can you not see what's going on?
It's better if you make the argument when you didn't lose the election. You know what I'm saying? Is that
from a position of strength.
On the position of strength. It's like, listen, anybody who studied any small bit of history knows the Electoral College is rooted in slavery. That was the entire reason that it was invented, essentially. And
completely ridiculous. Completely ridiculous. The comment that Jamel Hill is making here is as ridiculous and dumb as the comment that AOC is making here about the bicameral legislature, the Senate, being rooted in Jim Crow, that the Electoral College was founded on slavery.
It was.
But again, for the same reason that AOC is making that argument about the Senate being founded on Jim Crow, the reason that Jamel Hill is doing this and others do this is because they want to play on that black grievance, because they want to get rid of the institution. Because getting rid of the Electoral College and getting rid of the bicameral legislature takes us to direct democracy. And that's what they want. So they want to use that black grievance and that history of slavery as a means to getting rid of the Electoral College and the bicameral legislature. That's why Obama's saying that. That's why Obama is saying that, that our founding fathers were slave owners. They were all slave owners. That's why he's saying that. That's why it's very subtle again what Obama's doing, but that's why he's feeding into this. Let's listen to more of Jamel Hill here.
Rooted in slavery. That was the entire reason that it was invented, essentially. And we should have gotten from up under it a long time ago. And not just because you have two women quite capable who lose the election. So I don't have a problem with her argument.
This is what she's saying, because she's talking about Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris. First of all, Kamala Harris lost the popular vote, you idiot. So she says two women. She's talking about Kamala Harris and Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote and she lost the Electoral College. Kamala Harris lost both. So this woman is a complete idiot in what she's saying. But yes, she's very clear. She wants direct democracy. That's what she's saying.
A long time ago, and not just because you have two women quite capable who lose the election. So I don't have a problem with her argument. I think it's probably correct. And I think most people in this country, a big reason there's a lot of apathy is because a lot of people feel like their vote doesn't matter. And the reason they feel that way is because they look at things like, okay, let me get this straight. We can all agree and all, from a popular vote standpoint, vote for a candidate and that candidate still lose, and that the math doesn't math for them. So it's like, why are we clinging to the system?
Because that is our system. Why are we clinging to that system? So they want to change the system. Again, just like the DSA. This is not fringe. Abolish the Senate and abolish the Electoral College. No, it's not fringe. Not only the DSA believes that. AOC believes that. Jamel Hill believes that. Pete Buttigieg. Pete Buttigieg is second on the list here under AOC, second on the list in New Hampshire. Pete Buttigieg, second on the list. The first two people on the list in New Hampshire from the July poll believe that we should get rid of the Electoral College. So this is not, how can you say this is fringe? Listen to Pete Buttigieg here.
You're keen to remove the Electoral College and do it based on numbers, the quantity of votes for either presidential candidate.
And I still can't believe that anybody considers this radical. Like, to me, there's nothing radical about thinking the person who gets the most votes ought to be the winner.
Yeah, that's not our system. That's not the system that the founding fathers wanted. That's not the system that the founding fathers created in 1787 in Philadelphia when they created our Constitution. That's not the system. And the only reason that you can say that we need to get rid of the system that they created, if you associate those people that were in Constitutional Hall in 1787 with slavery, with racism, that everything that they did in that hall had to do with racism. How are the DSA's ideas fringe if the top two nominees in the poll for president of the United States in New Hampshire and other polls too? Pete Buttigieg is at the top of every poll. AOC's, she's there too, which is crazy. How are the DSA's ideas fringe if Pete Buttigieg, AOC, if everybody believes they're not fringe? This is the core of the Democratic Party.
Based on numbers, the quantity of votes for either presidential candidate.
And I still can't believe that anybody considers this radical. Like, to me, it's
completely radical
about thinking the person who gets the most votes.
It's completely radical.
But I think people haven't thought through how much benefit would come from that.
Oh my God, listen to this guy. I can't stand Pete Buttigieg.
There are so many votes in red and blue states that you couldn't ignore anymore. Like, if you were running for president as a Democrat, you'd have to go to Texas.
Yeah.
And even if Texas is still going to vote mostly for Republicans, you'd have to turn out every Democratic vote you could in Texas. And I just think we'd be so much better off if a Republican and Democratic candidate were competing over Texas. And by the way, New York, even if New York is definitely...
You can compete in Texas. You can compete in Texas, but the values in Texas, they don't want Democrats. Democrats can go and compete for the electoral votes in Texas. Republicans, Donald Trump in 2016, he came out to California many times. Every time he came out here, there was riots. There were people beaten in the streets. In San Jose, his supporters came out and he was campaigning in San Jose. They were beaten in the streets, bloodied. Everywhere. Donald Trump didn't avoid California because it was unlikely that he was going to win California. What's this fool talking about? This guy's a pseudo-intellectual too.
I still can't believe that anybody considers this radical. Like, to me, there's nothing radical about thinking the person who gets the most votes ought to be the winner. But I think people haven't thought through how much benefit would
No
come
one's
from
thought
that.
through it. No one's thought through it except I'm not going to be mean. I wanted to say something there. Nobody's thought through it except the Rhodes Scholar here. Rhodes Scholar Pete Buttigieg. He's the only one who's thought through it.
There's nothing radical about thinking the person who gets the most votes ought to be the winner.
Yeah, they didn't think through it in those racist founding fathers in Constitutional Hall in 1776. They didn't think through it like the Rhodes Scholar Pete Buttigieg.
I thought through how much benefit would come from that. If we did that, there are so many votes in red and blue states that you couldn't ignore anymore. Like, if you were running for president as a Democrat, you'd have to go to Texas.
Yeah.
And even if Texas is still going to vote mostly for Republicans, you'd have to turn out every Democratic vote you could in Texas. And I just think we'd be so much better off if a Republican and Democratic candidate were competing over Texas. And by the way, New York, even if New York is definitely going to vote more for Democrats, a Republican candidate would have to come to New York. And states from Alaska to...
This guy's a clown. So Pete Buttigieg thinks that we should get rid of the Electoral College. He's at the top of the list for the Democratic nominee for president in 2028. AOC at the top of the list for the Democratic Party nominee in 2028. Kamala Harris is at the top of the list for the Democratic Party in 2028. She also believes that we should get rid of the Electoral College. Take a listen.
We need to revisit the Electoral College. We need to revisit the point of expanding the court to 13 justices like we have 13 district courts.
So Kamala Harris, she said it over and over again. There's another one. Where's she at? There's another one of her saying it right here. Here it is, the interview she did this week. Here we go.
Say, look, this is a moment where there are no bad ideas. A no bad idea brainstorm is what I'd like to call it. And in that no bad ideas brainstorm, we talk about what we need to do and think about doing around the Electoral College. We talk about the idea of Supreme Court reform, which includes expanding the Supreme Court.
All right, so we need to get rid of that racist Electoral College and the racist bicameral legislature in the Senate. Kamala Harris, who's leading in the polls for the Democratic nominee for president in 2028, she believes that. Pete Buttigieg, who is one of the leading candidates for president of the United States in 2028, he believes that. AOC, who is one of the leading candidates for president of the United States in 2028, believes that. It's all rooted in Jim Crow and slavery and all this stuff. And who else believes that? The DSA. The DSA, it's top of their list. It's number one on their list. Abolish the Senate and the Electoral College. How's this fringe? How's the DSA fringe? This sounds like the core of the Democratic Party. Now, what is the truth about the bicameral legislature and the Electoral College? Well, Roger Sherman is a founding father. Roger Sherman is from Connecticut. He was one of the men who were in Constitutional Hall, who were debating the creation of the new government, the United States of America. Roger Sherman, let me see what it says here on his Wikipedia page. Roger Sherman was an early American politician, lawyer, and founding father of the United States, representing the state of Connecticut. He was the only person to sign all four great state papers of the United States. He's the only one. This guy is the founding father of the founding father. A lot of people don't know about Roger Sherman, but he was the only one to sign the Continental Association, the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, and the Constitution. He also signed the 1774 petition to King George. Roger Sherman from Connecticut. Was Roger Sherman from Connecticut a slave owner? Let's read here what it says. Roger Sherman did not own slaves. He was a lifelong opponent of slavery. He was, if you know who Roger Sherman was, you know that he was not only a lifelong opponent of slavery, he was vehemently against slavery. Roger Sherman, a founding father and signer of the Declaration of Independence and the United States Constitution and the Articles of Confederation and the Articles of Association, never personally owned slaves. He publicly opposed the institution of slavery throughout his life. He called the slave trade iniquitous. He did the work to restrict and eventually eliminate slavery in Connecticut, advocating for humane treatment and all the people as being made in the image of God. Roger Sherman. Roger Sherman is the one who created the bicameral legislature, which led to the Electoral College. The Connecticut Compromise, this was the compromise that got all of the states to finally agree to the creation of the Constitution. The Constitution could not have been ratified and would not have been ratified, meaning that there would be no United States of America without this compromise. Which is called the Connecticut Compromise or the Great Compromise or the Sherman Compromise, which is named after Roger Sherman. And Roger Sherman came up with the idea for the Senate. It had nothing to do with Jim Crow. AOC, you idiot. And the bicameral legislature led to the Electoral College, the Connecticut effect of the Great Compromise and the 1887 and the history of the small state impact on the Electoral College. The whole reason that they did this is because Connecticut, and where he got this idea is because small states like Connecticut, like Rhode Island, they didn't want larger states like New York and like Virginia to run roughshod over them. And this was a compromise that was made, that without this compromise, there would be no United States of America. And these idiots are saying that they want to change this, which is a core institution of the United States of America, which makes us a constitutional republic. Had nothing to do with Jim Crow or slavery. And that's the truth about the Electoral College and the bicameral legislature. And that's why the DSA wants to get rid of this institution and change. And what Obama says in his speech in 2008 when he won the presidential election, that he wants to transform the United States of America. This is what these people want to do. When they talk about transforming the United States of America, they want to get rid of the Senate, get rid of the Electoral College, but they want to do a lot more, people. They want to do a whole lot more. So that's the podcast today. We'll pick this back up on Friday. I hope you guys have a great week, and I'll see you on Friday.